from the Round Table at Uncle's Studios in beautiful Southern California. Welcome to another edition of WorkCom Matters, the central location for all you employees, you employers, and of course, you independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be your host for the next hour with some talk, some news, and hopefully some answers about WorkCom Matters. Thanks for being part of the show, and if you can break away from your WorkCom Matters, feel free to give us a call and clue us in with your questions, comments, and or concerns. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. You can send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. You can be old school and send me a fax, 818-475-1437. With me in studio, Dr. Michael Zima, attorney Robert Ozeron, Glen Laughlin of the Cherry Blue Storms, Scott Walton of Uncle's Studio is engineering the show. Back in Munich, Germany, attorney John Scalia. And back at WorkCom Central, making sure the whole damn thing goes right, is Jake Paris. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of WorkCom Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and ABC Rugs. And as we said in the opening, it's a pleasure to have from the Cherry Blue Storms, Mr. Glen Laughlin. By the way, how do you like the opening these days as compared to last time? Is it a little more polished or what?
It's just a gleaming spire.
Isn't that your music?
I was just going to say it couldn't be as gleaming if it wasn't for the Cherry Blue Storms underneath my God-like voice. What can I tell you? It's a pleasure to have you here again. I think last time you were here, you had just finished recovering from being in the hospital. You weren't feeling so well, and I hope everything now is as good as it can be.
Well, I think there's still room for improvement, but I'm doing a lot better. Thank you.
That's wonderful, and we're looking forward to. Thank you very much for volunteering your valuable time coming on out.
Sure.
And I was thinking today about what I was going to say, and I remember that Robert last week was saying that the one thing that he's taken back by for all of the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh is that it lessens the impact of the allegations from what appears to be totally legitimate complaints from women. It lessens the totally legitimate complaints. I'm not saying it word for word, but I'm paraphrasing it.
No, you got it right. It's the boy, kind of the basic lesson of the boy who cried wolf. Right? We learned that as a kid.
Right.
Well, Robert, what do you think about the additional allegations? Does that change anything in your view?
No, didn't I mention actually when the defense brings in a multitude of witnesses, but it's all garbage, and I said that that's a common tactic and to expect something possibly like
now
that.
The most recent,
and then what do you know?
Now
More
the
trash.
most recent thing is they're talking about these regular gang rape parties.
Oh, dude, this is getting wild. Trust me, by the end of this guy, they're going to start using the quote, literally Hitler. You know when people use the literally Hitler? It's not figuratively. It's literally Hitler. That's how they say it, the far
Robert,
left. It's going to be one of those situations.
You're still not placing any credibility in any of the accusers, is that correct?
You know what I place credibility in? The people who will show their face and testify that they have seen Brett Kavanaugh grow up from a young man to, Judge Kavanaugh, and have said they have him in their life. He's dated their sisters, and they will stand up for the type of man that he is, and he's a good man.
I don't even need that. I just need them to appear before the committee, raise their right hand, and testify under penalty of perjury, and then I will judge them right there.
Oh, no, because I know that today that Democratic lawyer, what's his name? The lawyer for Stormy
Representing
Daniels?
Stormy Daniels.
Avenatti. Yeah, Obnoxious. What? Obnoxious is his name? Obnoxious. But anyways, I believe
that wasn't that funny, but go ahead.
Well, either way, he submitted a sworn affidavit, apparently.
Correct.
Okay, so that just shows you that testimony that's sworn sometimes still is lacking credibility.
It's a sworn affidavit by a mother talking about her daughter and saying how I'll bring my daughter forward if they want her to testify.
No, I don't think so. It's the woman's name is Julie Svetnik,
okay.
And I believe it's Julie Svetnik's sworn affidavit. But, Robert, I'm wondering...
That's what I'm saying. It's a sworn affidavit, but what does that really mean anymore? See, they're cheapening everything. Now something sworn under penalty of perjury, it means nothing.
Well,
it's not worth the paper it's printed on.
But I guess it means something when Brett Kavanaugh says it, whether it's under penalty of perjury or not.
Well, exactly. The word of somebody is worth what that person behind the words is worth. right? Some people say things and you can't take it at face value, but if the judge tells you something, you should believe him. That's kind of how the world operates.
You're referring to credibility?
Different people have different levels of credibility in life.
Just because he's a judge?
Oh my gosh. Because you're a judge, you probably have to put more stock into his credibility than less, and you have to know that frivolous accusations are going to be coming. If you're a judge,
aren't
you have to be ready for that.
Aren't you going to await the hearing tomorrow to judge the relative credibility of these folks?
Oh, listen, they still have a hope. Yeah, the Hail Mary pass. Even Trump held out hope in the beginning that this could be credible, and well, not hope, I don't want to say, reserved judgment, okay? He reserved judgment in the beginning to hear what this woman had to say. But then, all of the facts start coming out, and it's just a circus trick after the other, and it's just enough. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked that we're still talking about it, because I'm already over it. Like,
we may be just beginning to talk about it.
Well,
that's what the Democrats want.
And you haven't mentioned any of these facts that are bogus.
So let's go for it. Firstly, does the person here report a local crime to their senator or to the police department? Because I'm not sure how that works. Second, Dianne Feinstein met with Brett Kavanaugh numerous months ago, but decided to withhold this. Why? Because it probably lacked credibility at the time.
Wait, I thought we were talking about facts.
These are facts. These are timeline facts. A timeline's important.
But
right?
you're reading. Well,
timeline is very important. If someone reports an incident that happens the day after, you give it more credibility than 36 years later. Right? That's a timeline fact. The timeline is facts that you cannot change as a person. You can't really make them up when you do an activity that is verified by other people.
Yeah, there are a couple of problems with that, Robert.
Go for it.
All right. Well, one of the problems is that by the very nature of the kinds of accusations we're talking about and the world as it existed at the time that happened versus later, we know that there are many, 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 many instances where women have withheld complaining about such things.
For sure. And that's what I talked about last week, is that we must protect women and that women must be believed and that most sexual assaults go unreported. Well, this is all facts. That doesn't change this individual instant. I asked you to look at Duke lacrosse recently. Remember where that woman was gang raped by the lacrosse team? They were expelled from school. Their reputations are over.
And the prosecutor disbarred, by the way.
Oh, yeah. But it doesn't matter. It's over. Okay? I mean, when you have that stain on you, it's a life sentence, no matter what you say or subsequently happens with any retraction. It doesn't work that way in the world. You don't throw these types of allegations at people. That's why they have slander laws. Okay?
Right. I'm certainly not suggesting that there are not false accusations. Sometimes because people are deluded, and sometimes people have bad memories, and sometimes people are just evil and they're looking to blame somebody, and that does happen.
But look at the context.
But I'm getting back to the two. I'm trying to stay on track here. The two things that give the lie to what you were saying is that, number one, we know there are many instances. For example, just this week, a big scandal unfolded in Germany in the Catholic Church, as we know has happened in many other places, right? And these things didn't come out for decades and decades, right? But now people, I think, wholesale believe these things. Not that every single incident is true, but...
Okay, we're talking about a big institution like the Catholic Church and a long-going conspiracy, and one individual, Judge Brett Kavanaugh.
I was just going to say, with the Catholic Church, it was a decades-long cover-up.
And conspiracy, that's right. Then they're moving people around.
People, what my point is that these
they went unreported.
They went unreported. And in many cases, I'm sure, I'm guessing here, but I suspect that a lot of these people maybe did complain to their local parish and not to the police, and it got covered up.
They were told
whatnot.
that, shut up.
Sure, but there are facts in those situations, right? There are medical records frequently.
Well, there are records in this case.
No, there are not. There's one record making reference to a vague assault by an unknown individual that is different than the allegations currently pled, in the sense that she doesn't recall where it happened, when it happened, who was there. The individual who did it at the time, I believe she complained in 2012 or something like that to her therapist. Maybe this woman really is a victim, and that's what I feel bad about.
Well, there's no question in my mind. I think that she was assaulted at that party.
But I just don't think Brett Kavanaugh had anything to do with it.
I'm reserving judgment on.
Yeah, he's denied being there. I think this may be an issue of... somebody who was previously assaulted and is trying to act maybe like some sort of political hero.
Glenn, are you aware of any contemporaneous records documenting this stuff?
No, I think the only record I've heard about is the same one that Robert's probably referring to. But so that's one thing. The fact of the very nature of the kind of complaint that it is often had gone unreported at the time.
And that's why we give them the ear. We listen. Okay, with an open mind.
Well, you don't sound like you have an open mind to me.
The facts came out pretty good on both sides, especially Judge Kavanaugh's history. You have to recall, if we're going to talk about things that are generalized patterns, like unreporting rape, another generalized pattern would be somebody who commits such an assault would have a history of such assaults.
Robert, I have to agree with Glenn. It sounds like you've already made up your mind.
You know,
well, I have
I want to
seen the
address
circus,
the point
and I'm
made.
over it. Okay.
So does that mean you have made up your mind before
I have
the
a sliver
testimony?
of, no, I mean, listen, there's that fourth quarter Hail Mary, Packers, Lions. Remember that thing with Aaron Rodgers?
I know what a Hail Mary
Yeah.
is.
So
But you were
the Hail
saying-
Mary with the ref, that's possible. There is some sort of possibility that everybody is, who disagrees with this woman is
But
wrong.
the Hail Mary notwithstanding, you've made up your mind
Yeah,
already.
and the Hail Mary notwithstanding, the evidence seems rather overwhelming.
Do you think that's wise?
Well, I'm reserving some room for judgment, but basing it on the facts that I've seen. I mean, yes.
Okay,
What else can I do?
Well, one thing that you did do is you said when there's this kind of a situation, there's a likelihood. I mean, I'm paraphrasing that there are other instances.
Yes.
And so now we have two other people that have come forward specifically about Kavanaugh. We also have somebody that accused Mark Judge, who was supposedly the guy that said, "Well, I don't remember anything like that happening at that party."
All unverified complaints, all individual accusations made many years after that can never be corroborated by any type of factual evidence.
Bill Cosby just went to jail. He's just going to jail now for things that had been reported and unreported for decades.
Happened in 2004, actually.
Well,
Yeah,
happened.
but they know that there are things that went on way before.
But going
that.
back to Cosby, then that proves my point. He has an MO. He's the type of guy who does this. And when guys do things like that, they keep on doing them, right? Like Cosby raping people. Okay, that's why to have such an accusation against Kavanaugh in this isolated, unverified type of manner is so inappropriate. It shouldn't even be given the light of day if there's no facts to back it up. It really shouldn't. The FBI's cleared this man how many times? 6 times, I think, before he's reached this point, and now it's number 7, basically, by the Senate.
Well, they haven't investigated these complaints.
What's to investigate? Everyone's denied it. They've looked into it already.
They have not looked into these
they-
specific
I
allegations.
have to
because
say-
look at the timing. They're coming in at the 11th hour, and the complaints that are coming in even today, I have to admit, sound really ridiculous.
They're getting more and more ridiculous. And the fact that it happens when it happens, this is kind of like the back to the poker, right? When somebody bets and how much they bet gives you information. If these allegations were credible and there was really something to investigate, it would have been the thing you lead with. You lead with your strong suit, right? You lead with your strong foot. You don't lead with, what is it? Well, nothing.
You don't lead with your chin?
In summary,
boxing?
but the Democrats really led with protesters from the gallery. That would seem to be the first attempt. Okay,
They paid protesters to disrupt the proceedings.
after
yes.
4 days, it was pretty much that's a non-starter, and then it's you know what, we have to do something a little bit more targeted, more of a personal attack. You know what, let's find somebody who could make an allegation. Clearly, things that are made by affidavit are not necessarily the most credible, right? We just learned that with Abenati's affidavit today, alleging a gang rape, or like this Hail Mary type of approach, I could be totally wrong, and I could be in the dark about some sort of closet psycho who's covered it up and is amazing and so manipulative, like Judge Kavanaugh might be. That's so unrealistic and unreasonable, though. The more reasonable approach is these are all lies. He's an honorable judge. He's served for 30 years now, 25 years.
Well, I certainly want to see the testimony tomorrow before I
I'm going
finally
to be
judge.
glued to the TV. I'm glad that I'm not going to be in court. Glenn, are you going to be in court, or you got a TV in your office?
No TV in our office.
But you have radio, obviously, I presume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably could.
I think that I was talking to Mike earlier. This is the most anticipated TV in a long time. I mean, I think Mike ranked it like Watergate first, the Oliver North hearing second, Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas third, and now we have this.
Didn't they talk about some sort of sex prosecutor trying to do the direct testimony?
Yes,
Yes.
It's a woman from Phoenix, and she is a prosecutor that is apparently highly regarded.
A sex crimes prosecutor. Phoenix.
And the bio stuff that I was able to dig up today talks about how she has an empathy in her questioning to victims. So that is going to be another interesting aspect.
That's good. Try to elicit the truth here.
The senators are going to have 5 minutes each also.
And I believe her statement is already out. Her statement's already been made public.
Whose statement? The prosecutor gave?
No, Dr. Ford's. She's going to read a statement which I believe has already been leaked out.
Oh, is that right?
I think so.
I'm wondering what you guys think. Do you think that people will actually leave them, open their minds open to make a new decision based on the testimony, or do you think it's going to be mostly confirmation bias from both sides?
Well, that's a real interesting because I have not made up my mind. There are times when I lean one way and lean the other. But I have not made up my mind. Glenn, have you made up your mind?
I haven't made up my mind. I like to think that I can be objective regardless of my feelings. I mean, my feelings have made up their mind, and that's based on not only on the fact that I don't care for him as a candidate, but the way, going back to the way Obama's candidate was treated. Then
Merrick
Garland, and then also the way that they've tried to rush through this confirmation
so
process.
So it's the
without
theft of the Dems' choice that is really dispositive.
No, that's just one thing. What's more important than that? I mean, that's really aggravating. But what I think is more actually important is the fact that there were so many documents about Brett Kavanaugh's very prolific history in right-wing politics that they did not want to give to the Senate, and then when they did it, in the 11th hour, and it still wasn't everything, but it was, very late in the game, and then they said, well, you may not have time to read all these thousands of documents, but we want to rush through the vote anyway.
Are there documents that have not been reviewed?
Yes.
Lots of them?
Lots of them, yes, still.
Robert, are you aware of that?
I've heard of this request, and it's, I believe, not true. My understanding is that Judge Kavanaugh's team has provided more documents than any Supreme Court nominee ever. And a large percentage of the documents Democrats requested, which were not provided, was when Judge Kavanaugh was working for the Bush White House, and those documents would pass through his desk and be subject to executive privilege.
And that was after they had already produced literally over 1 million documents.
Like I said, remember, the Democrats didn't read Obamacare before they passed it, and it was 3,300 pages, and they've now turned over for Judge Kavanaugh's team nearly 500,000. So I don't think that it's
Well,
this is all politics. That's why I thought we were talking about something new today, because this is rather...
No. We're talking about this until it's over, because this is what people want to hear.
No, but if the Democrats have their way, it'll never be over. That's the point of it.
Well, Glenn, would not some of those Kavanaugh documents be subject to executive privilege if they were produced during the Bush White House years?
Well, it's possible that some of them would, but there was a claim that some of them were, and then it turned out that they had already been released which was not known, obviously, by either side. And then it was like, oh, these are not classified documents after all, and so then that portion did get given to the Democrats, but that was right before they wanted to push through a vote. And then, of course, obviously, we know what's happened since then. And
but
things
you don't
have gotten
like
delayed.
Kavanaugh.
No, I don't.
He's A-rated with 10 stars with all the judicial review boards. All of his decisions have been gone over, and he gets tops.
But do you think he's a political hack, Glenn?
That might be putting it strongly, but there certainly are a lot of decisions that where he was the outlier. So.
I'm not sure about that, but I do think what's interesting is that you can this is a left versus right type of political, debate.
It is.
So, and that's also one of the contexts in which I don't believe that there's such an allegation in the context of politics, even though you can say the politicians may be more apt for such conduct.
Well, then let's talk about what we think the keys will be tomorrow. This is what I know. I know that she is going to go first. I believe she's going to read a pre-written statement, and then she's going to be subject to questions by the prosecutor and 5 minutes each or whatever by the committee members. It's going to take the first part of the day. It's going to happen here Pacific Coast time starting at 7 a.m. I think what is going to be critical, number one, if she refuses to answer any questions, and two, if she is asked about when did she first meet Kavanaugh, was it at the party or was it before the party? What happened more specifically? Robert, you were talking about a timeline from right before going into the bedroom to what happened exactly in the bedroom, and then what happened exactly outside of the bedroom. Then, when Kavanaugh comes on in the afternoon, he has not come out and denied knowing her. But then again, I don't believe anybody yet has asked him. I specifically want him asked, did you know this woman when you were in school? When did you first meet her? What type of communications did you have with her? I still don't remember if he's denied being at that party or not. But
yes, he has.
Okay,
He has.
well then fine. Then did he know him or her? How did he know her? What type of communications did he have with her? And I want to hear that because he hasn't denied not knowing her.
You know, you mentioned earlier, in the day or the previous couple days, and just now, her refusing to answer some questions. Are you talking about questions of sexual history? And Robert, if they ask questions of sexual history, that's out of bounds, is it not?
that would be out of bounds.
Rape shield, right?
Robert,
Well,
according to what rule
Rape
is it out
shield.
of? Well, this is not a rape shield criminal
Well,
trial.
yeah,
this is
this-
a Senate confirmation.
Conduct in conformity therewith.
Yeah, all of the due process rights that would be afforded in a criminal trial have gone way out the window in this situation, okay? I know the Dems were a lot of times demanding that you have to defend the allegations before they're even made.
And by the way,
by
none of the
accusing
questions that I
witness.
just mentioned were anti-rape shield questions.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. What type of questions in your mind are you thinking she might refuse to answer?
I would assume towards her sexuality and her sexual experience.
Sexual history, right?
Sexual history, if they decide to ask, which I
I
don't
don't think
know
they're
if
going to be
going
asking that. That would seem to be a kind of a sinking point for anybody who would raise that issue.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I think more importantly,
That's
they're
the
going
rape shield.
They're going to ask about who was at this party, whose home was this, how many people were there, who have you told about this previously, how many times when you spoke
How
to
drunk
them.
were you?
How drunk were you?
Sure. How many times did you drink at that time?
When the allegation was first made, I seem to recall her attorney said that she had one beer.
Well, one beer usually means three.
And at a 15-year-old, she's a 15-year-old with one beer at the time, right? Is what she claims.
That's what her attorney said, yes.
Okay, so a lot of people will recollect their assaults vividly. Other people may not recollect anything. As we know, when it comes to fake accusations like that Duke lacrosse case, there's a lot of specific details. And I remember Ted was here talking about, well, she has so much specificity. Well, so did the Duke lacrosse accuser. They just make it up as they go along because they want more.
You know
they
what
give them
I'm
more.
really worried about, and I just flashed on this, to use a drug term. Sorry, but it happened when I sat in juries. Okay, twice, gnarly felonies. With each witness, I was hoping that the witness was going to give an indication of guilt or innocence, and that just didn't happen. Of course, because it was a criminal case, so the person had to be acquitted. But my nightmare for tomorrow is that I'm not going to be able to get a read on her either way. And I'm not going to be able to get a read on him either way.
That would be unfortunate. I think for Judge Kavanaugh, he's already come out, seems pretty credible. So I don't know if you're going to change your opinion on him, even if no matter how you see him.
Well, it's primarily her.
Yeah, no one's ever seen her. I mean, this will be her first time in public as far as answering to this,
Well,
right?
Glenn, what would be an indication of credibility with her? Could you articulate that, or what are you going to be looking at tomorrow at 7:01 a.m.?
That's a very good question. To be honest with you, I hadn't even really considered it. I didn't think that I was
Glenn will
likely
be
to actually. Yeah, I'm not going to be watching it.
You're not?
I will be.
I may be listening to it on NPR.
Oh, okay. You're
Oh.
going to tape it?
No, I won't tape it.
I see.
I'll just get the the thing from
The highlight.
NPR. We'll have it archived. I can get that.
Steve, what is going to be an indication to you of credibility with the doctor?
After she finishes her statements, how she responds to the questions and whether or not she refuses to answer any of the questions by the prosecutor.
What do you guys think the sentiment is on the street as far as believe or disbelieve currently?
50-50.
I was just going to say 50-50.
Glenn, what do you think?
Well, I think that in light of the Anita Hill thing and in light of the Me Too movement and in light of how the Republicans played fast and loose, rather, with the rules regarding the Obama's candidate, Merrick Garland, I think that it's more like 49-51. You know, I think that had this happened when Anita Hill happened, well, we saw what happened then.
But you're saying it's close.
And I still think it's close. Yeah. But
I was speaking to a workers' comp Democratic attorney who I respect very much, and he basically came out and said, "I'm against any judge appointed by this administration because of what happened with the appointment with Judge Garland." Said I'm against any appointment by this administration. And I said, well, how long are you going to let the Supreme Court go with only 8 judges? He says 2 more years if I have to.
And then what? Trump's going to win re-election. His head's going to explode.
Well, that's arguably a new administration, right?
No, it's the same administration. Keep going. But either way, okay, so he's going to be holding his breath for another 6 years? That's not reasonable, okay? I don't want people to believe or disbelieve a sexual assault allegation based on their political affiliation.
I agree with that.
That seems so dangerous. I disbelieve this based on the circumstances, but I'm holding out some sort of reservation just in case I'm totally wrong. But otherwise, the facts are not so great, in my opinion, for the accuser.
I have to say that in the last 72 hours, and I believe I can say the following because I'm a Catholic. I have begun to look at Kavanaugh, and I don't buy the altar boy appearance.
I mean, why not? Hasn't he been keeping it up for about 40 years? He went to Harvard Law or whatever it was, and then he became a judge.
I'm going to put words in Mike's mouth. He's starting to see some cracks in the armor.
Yes.
I think maybe you want to see cracks, or you're looking real close, and it's some sort of...
Before all this stuff started coming out, I just thought this guy was a cat's meow. I thought this was an excellent choice. I thought his academics were extremely solid. He was a family guy and all this, yada, yada, yada. And then the stuff started coming out, and I started looking at it, and I started thinking, I've known some Catholics that kind of look like that weren't really as pure as the driven snow like they like people to believe. Now, again, I'm going to be looking tomorrow, but I'm just talking about in the last 72 hours, it's been kind of leaning the other way.
Yeah, I have to say that, I mean, if I wanted to put weight into the kinds of feeling about these things that Mike just expressed, Kavanaugh would have already been gone. But I like you, to that extent, I don't like it to be based on politics, and I don't like it to just be based on my subjective feelings. I can't completely discount when you get a sense of something. You like to think there's a reason you have a sense, but there's got to be more than that to boot the guy. And I would be the first to say that, regardless of my feelings about Trump, regardless of my feelings about the way they handled the prior candidate.
Some sort of corroboration is required, not just a baseless allegation with nothing, right?
Yes.
Something.
Yeah.
Any cross-reference may knock a Supreme Court nominee because it's a very high position.
Well, exactly, and that's where I'm a little concerned. Now there's a third person that has an allegation against him, plus the way that Mark Judge originally had a vague denial. And then he seemed to walk that back a little bit, and then there was an allegation against him. So, when you're talking about the highest position in the land, and in my opinion, in many ways higher than the president, and obviously a lifetime appointment, it puts an extra onus on being sure that you have somebody that is honorable. And by the way, this may not be very politically acceptable, but, even if this guy did this way back in high school 30-some years ago, do I think that's the most important aspect of whether or not this guy should be a judge? I mean, I'm not saying that that's not a relevant thing to consider.
And I want to get to exactly that on the other side of the break, but it's time for a little break. We've got one of our main contributors, Attorney John Scalia, who's hanging out in Munich, Germany. His segment this week is on the Supreme Court nomination process and Brett Kavanaugh. So without further ado, on Work Comp Matters, here's John Scalia.
Hi, this is John with the Work Comp International Report from Munich. I'm going to begin this week by using a Latin saying, which I learned during my 4 years of Latin in my prep school in San Francisco. In vino, in ira, in puero est veritas. Translated, that means in wine, in anger, and in a child, there is truth. Why did the Romans say that? Well, because when people drink too much, they say things that they don't really intend to say. It loosens them up, as we say. When they're angry, they say things that they have repressed when they're not angry. And as a child, well, children have vivid imaginations and make lots of things up, but they have not yet learned the artifice of lying. They have not yet learned all the devices which adults use in order to hide the truth. Now, why is all this relevant? Well, as we all know, last week, the Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, was accused of attempted rape during high school. His accuser was Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. Dr. Ford has a PhD in psychology from the University of Southern California and is a professor at Palo Alto University. When Dr. Ford accused Brett Kavanaugh of this, she undoubtedly knew what the consequences were going to be. She's a smart person, and she knew that she was accusing a nationally now prominent jurist of attempted rape. So she knew that she was going to be accused, her character would be assaulted, and her credibility would be attacked from everybody from the President of the United States to alt-right spokespeople. And of course, that has happened. Trump has finally tweeted about, this is ridiculous, it's too long ago. This from a guy who bragged about assaulting women. And one of the alt-right spokespeople, Ann Coulter, has said, well, this is one of the hazards on Kavanaugh's part of coming from a position of white privilege. Now, that's even more stupid than most of the stuff that Coulter says. And let me tell you why. Yeah, Kavanaugh comes from a position of white privilege. But guess what? So does Christine Blasey Ford. The attempted rape that she talks about occurred at a party she was attending with Kavanaugh, where people from his high school, Georgetown Prep, and people from her high school were together. She went to a female high school that was the equivalent of the male high school that Kavanaugh was going to. That's why they were at the party together. She was at a high school for privileged white females. Yes, they do exist. So in other words, this is not an accusation because one person has a lower social status than the other. It's not even an accusation that one has a superior position in society because they were both high school students with rich parents. Yeah. So this is an accusation among peers. Now, my understanding is that her lawyer told Dr. Ford to take a lie detector test, and then she took it and passed. Now, district attorneys know it's not admissible in court, so we will never see that thing used in a congressional hearing. But certainly, from a PR standpoint, that was good advice. Now, let me tell you about privilege. As you remember, I began my segment by quoting some Latin. Yes, I went to the same kind of high school that Brett Kavanaugh went to. In fact, it's a sister school. I went to St. Ignatius College Preparatory in San Francisco, and it's bigger than Kavanaugh's Georgetown Prep, but it is home to the rich and powerful and their sons and daughters. And if you think I'm exaggerating, well, Jerry Brown, the governor of California, is one of my alums from St. Ignatius. And the next governor of California, Gavin Newsom, also is an alum from St. Ignatius. And in terms of females in the same position, well, SI was all, as we call it, was all male when I was there. But one of the equivalent girls' schools was called Convent of the Sacred Heart. Obviously, that's not a Jewish name. But guess who went there? Dianne Feinstein. I don't know what her maiden name was, but she, in fact, went to the Convent of the Sacred Heart. Why? Because Daddy was rich, and he was no idiot. He wanted her to go to a place where white, privileged females went to high school. So he sent her there. Seems to have worked out. Anyway, based on all those, my gut instinct is to believe Christine Blasey Ford and her accusations against Brett Kavanaugh. That's the view from Munich this week.
And John, as always, thank you very much. We've got our regular song from Glen Laughlin and the Cherry Blue Storms, La Familia, Baby You're a Rich Man. Maybe we'll talk about that in a moment. We'll be back after the musical break.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far, far as the eye can see? Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do.
Glen Laughlin and the Cherry Blue Storms with Baby You're a Rich Man. Before we get back to the Kavanaugh thing, Glenn, tell me, what did it take to properly license that Beatles song and get it so you were able to do what you did?
You go to Harry Fox agency and you get a clearance through them. And
so anybody could license a Beatles song to do that?
For the kind of purpose that we did it, yes. If you wanted to do a show like Love or something like that where you used a bunch of Beatles songs or things like that, I think it might be, you might have to get permission, or Beatlemania or something like that.
So you can't just cover, you have to pay.
Yeah, you have to pay, and you pay based on what you're doing. You know, so if you're pressing 20,000 copies of vinyl albums, it's different than if you're doing 200 CDs or, you know.
Right.
So they quote you a price, and then you pay based on that. And, you know, so for example, if we go and play a club and we play Baby You're a Rich Man, we don't pay anything for that. The club is licensed by ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, etc., and they're the ones who cover that, cover the fee for the cover.
Fee for the cover, got it.
And but if we're selling on our own label, we're selling a CD that has a Beatles song on it, then yeah, we have to get the clearance.
So on the other side of the break, Glenn, you brought up the topic of essentially what people were like back then, and essentially can people change, and if it really matters. And I have spoken to people on both sides of this issue where hypothetically, if Kavanaugh did do what Dr. Ford is alleging 36 years ago, does it matter now? You know, can people change? And if they do change, does it matter?
I'd like to answer that. Okay.
Sure, please.
And partly because I'm concerned that, by saying something that I said up front was perhaps not politically correct sounding, that it may sound like, oh, I don't care if some guy assaulted somebody and.
And that's not what I intended to mean by what I said.
Right. And that's not what I meant to say either. So I just want to clarify. I think that people are human, people make mistakes, and people, are not necessarily just bad people because they did something, even if they did something very bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are not qualified to make decisions in their job, be it Supreme Court justice or be it janitor or be it whatever. The problem is in this case, in this hypothetical case where he admittedly did it or was shown to have done this.
Hypothetically, if he did it,
if he did it, right? A couple things. Number one, I don't want to discount the feelings of the universe of women, and I particularly don't want to discount it at this very pregnant moment when the awareness has come to the fore.
The Me Too moment.
The Me Too movement has come to the fore, and so on. So I think it's more critical, and of course it's even more critical given the position that we're talking about, and then that is even more important because the Supreme Court, even though we want to kind of put it beyond politics, however, the Supreme Court are a unique institution, not only in the United States, but I think maybe in the world, in that we have a flexible constitution. It's something that the brilliance of it is that they knew that it would be flexible back then. And the Supreme Court has at various times in our history interjected their subjective sense of what the people and the want in the United States, what the character of the people is, what the culture demands. They're looking at these things, and that does affect their interpretation of the law, which governs us. And so, even though I, as an individual person, may be probably more forgiving of that kind of malfeasance if he did it than most people would be, I believe I would be. And I wouldn't necessarily tar the entire body with the same brush as the little toe that made this mistake 30-some years ago. But in this circumstance, at this time, with this position, with more than one person making these allegations, I would be much more cautious.
Steve, let me ask you a question. Would not, assuming that he did it, arguendo, would not the lying about not having done it be dispositive?
I was just going to say, for me, and again, don't take this the wrong way, everybody, but the Me Too movement, what we're in right now, it's totally irrelevant. What's key is what Mike just said, that he completely lied and denied it, and therefore, based on that and that alone, he should not be confirmed, assuming that he indeed did it and then
Glenn,
lied about it.
What about the lies? Assuming arguendo that he did it, would not the lies about it be dispositive?
Absolutely. I wasn't really considering that because, again, we're talking about a hypothetical and, did he do it or did I was just talking about the deed itself. Would that exclude him? Let's say he admitted that he did it. So, yeah, I was drunk. So now, I was a high school student. I did it, whatever, but...
And then let's just say hypothetically he did it and he admitted it. Then is it okay for him 36 years later to be confirmed as Supreme Court Justice? That's a little more thought-provoking to me because
yes, it is.
If it's okay to be a Supreme Court Justice when you admit to attempting to rape a woman, but now you've changed, then where do you draw the line? Do you have to have successfully raped a woman? Do you have to have successfully raped a woman and be convicted? Where do you draw
this assumes that you would believe that a man who can forcibly try to rape a woman can change. And a lot of people, myself included, don't believe that a man can change. If you did something like that, you ain't coming around me and my family. All right, I mean, you're going to be on that Megan's Law, and people are going to be looking for real estate far away from you. Okay.
So you're talking successfully rape. You're not talking attempted.
Attempted, successful. A man who tries to do something like that,
if you're incompetent, that you don't get a free pass.
Yeah,
you're incompetent.
Yeah. The attempted or the successful, it doesn't matter.
It's the same.
If you're trying to forcibly rape a woman, that is a serious serious issue. That's the type of guy that, if something happened to him in prison, you wouldn't be too worried about it. Put it this way, this is all nice and make-believe, but it's not true, okay? That's all of these are there's just no substantiation. There's going to be no corroboration except more unsubstantiated allegations that don't, if you start looking at it, will start to fall apart.
Well, I think you're the only one at the table that's really pretty much made up their mind.
Pretty much. I mean, I told you there's that Hail Mary chance, but it's no timeouts left. You still need to catch an onside kick after that, so it's over.
What would change it? Some type of corroboration?
Okay. You would need an admission of some sort of corroboration, factual, photo, something like that, showing that, or another incident similar to that is corroborated. Right? You need something to show that this is the type of guy who does something like this. This is character evidence. I know it wouldn't be admissible necessarily in trial.
Pattern.
Well, the Cosby is a pattern. Okay, that's an MO. This is isolated stuff. Apparently, 30 plus years ago, and then he has a successful family and a bunch of relationships where every woman at the end of it vouches for him. You think that he would at least have one bitter ex. This guy's like, this is a saint, Mike. They came on CNN saying he was a total gentleman. He dated my sister. And hopefully a woman who's had an intimate relationship with a man would know if he's some sort of secret power rapist, okay? That seems very reasonable. And if that woman comes out and says, no, he's a very nice man, and it's unlikely that this other lady, that Ford, is telling the truth, why wouldn't you believe the woman who stepped out in front of the camera, says, I've had a relationship with him, or a family member of mine has, and he's a great guy?
Well, there were like 70 of them.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem. When it comes to corroboration, if you want to look at the other side, as far as people supporting other people's allegations or statements, not allegations, this would be a positive statement, supporting each other's statements, it's on Kavanaugh's side. The man who says, I'll be available within an hour. The man who's brought up his exes, which is totally inappropriate when you're married, to bring out someone's exes and ask him about how he was in his relationship before his marriage, okay? That's really low and below the belt and disrespectful to his wife.
I didn't hear that, by the way.
Well, they're going into saying, this woman talks about him dating her sister and how he was during the relationship. This is inappropriate when you're a married man and with a family, talking about your old girlfriends and stuff like that. But fine, if you're going to go there, ask him. How was he? How was he in the bedroom? Is he a sick individual? Is he a perverted person? Oh, no, he's a really nice guy? Well, okay, you've seen him more intimately than the rest of us. Why wouldn't we believe you?
Well, Glenn, is there anything that could save the confirmation on your side?
I don't understand that question, Mike. Can you rephrase that?
Is there anything that happens in the next 48 hours that would make you go, you're okay with him as a Supreme Court Justice?
I see.
Well, there's nothing that will make me okay with him as a Supreme Court Justice.
Well, you just don't like it.
Well, that's true, but that's, again...
Glenn's also appealed that the Democrats, that the Republicans stole the thing.
But
go ahead.
If it were my duty, if I were a senator, if my vote or my opinion mattered for anything, I would look at the proper criteria, and if this was not something to be put any stock into, these allegations of abuse 30-some years ago, and I only had to look
Talk into your mic, buddy.
And I only had to look at his actual judicial record, then my concern would only be that we actually got to look at the judicial and relevant record, and that we had enough time to parse it before making a decision.
Well, what about the allegations? Is there anything that can happen, like, for example, at the hearing tomorrow, that would assuage you in that he's not a bad guy?
I suspect that it's that she's going to make a reasonably good showing, and he's going to make a reasonably good showing, and I'll be in no better position. But should she explode somehow and not seem credible at all, then I would say, well, there's not enough corroboration, and there's not enough on her part to be convincing. So I would not, as my fictional duty as a fictional senator, I will not put that in the card of what I'm going to consider when I'm going to vote yay or nay on it.
Yeah, the odds are totally against her, because Kavanaugh's already been arguably grilled for 4 days, and all he has to do now really is deny everything, assuming it's true.
And he already has, yeah.
Everything is up to, it starts with her, whether or not the accuser, Dr. Ford, is going to be considered credible. Because if she's not credible, and I think we'll know right away, then Kavanaugh's in. He's a shoo-in.
Well, but beyond that, if he's not for some reason, we're just going to get Kavanaugh too anyway. So the big thrill of getting him knocked off the block would only be retribution for what happened before. From speaking as a liberal and somebody who resented the way the other candidate was treated,
because Trump presumably has another 2 and maybe another 4 after that.
Sure.
So what's the
they're
point?
lined up.
Right.
They're lined up.
Right. No, because there. That's what I'm saying is that there is a point. I think it would be important to stand up for what's right, whether he is a bad individual and an attempted rapist or not, and knowing full well that we're going to get Kavanaugh number 2 or number 3 or number 4, whatever, fine. But I still say, you have to weigh in with what you believe.
I must say that this is the lowest, the dirtiest, the scummiest way for one party to attempt a judge to get to get confirmed that I've ever seen in my entire
lifetime.
That's what I was
going to say. Is on the other side.
I've never seen a party seek so low.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Is on the other side, you say, well, what if these allegations against Kavanaugh are true? What if they're not true, which is the facts? How disgusting is that on the other side to make these types of allegations by Dianne Feinstein, to hold it, to wait till day 4, to throw out these allegations unsubstantiated without the person appearing on camera going through the senator? How does that even happen? By the way, how do you report a crime to a senator but not the police?
What would her other option be?
How do you call Dianne Feinstein? Can you report your assault or your car getting broken into Dianne Feinstein, or is that only reserved for people who know information
She could have brought
against
it
Brett
up
Kavanaugh?
on day 1.
No. My point. Well, she could, but apparently Christine Ford did not want to be named at first.
She waited till the Democrats interrupted 4 days of hearings and decided now is the moment. I am Spartacus. Okay.
Well, her privacy was threatened, and in fact, her well-being has been threatened.
As has Kavanaugh.
Well, everybody in the
as soon as you're a public
but
figure.
You know what? Death threats, and I don't mean to minimize this. Death threats these days, through the internet, it's a common daily occurrence. Glenn, let me ask you a question because we got about 7-8 minutes left. You said earlier, in so many words, you weren't happy with Kavanaugh's decisions.
Correct.
What is it about his decisions that you don't like, or what decisions do you not like of his?
Well, I wasn't really prepared, for this discussion, but in here and there, I haven't really made a study of it. But as I've been, reading this article or that, as it happened to come across my attention, I've looked at cases where he wrote an outlying opinion. One of the things that seems to be a recurring theme, and I have heard some of his testimony before the Senate, and he has sounded like very, very waffly on the issue of whether or not the president is basically above the law.
Right.
And this is one thing that concerns me, and of course, particularly
I thought he
with
said
this,
in his mind the president is above the law.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I agree with it. That's what he says.
Yeah, he said things kind of both ways. In fact, he admitted that he pretty much was clear about that 10, 20 years ago in some decisions and in some papers that he wrote. And then now I heard him in an interview, in fact, and he said, no, that's not the case now at all. But
because before he was saying that the president could not be prosecuted for certain crimes, correct?
During the presidency.
Correct. Committed prior to his presidency while in office. Correct.
Yeah. And so that's only one thing that has concerned me.
Well, Mike, do you agree with that philosophy?
Well, my understanding is that his opinion was that a sitting president could not be criminally prosecuted for certain alleged crimes while he was in office. But I guess I was mistaken on that, Robert.
I thought that's what it was.
That as well. Correct.
Oh, okay.
Well,
so
he said that, but he said other things as well, and obviously that is a conflict with the whole idea of if a president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Well, I think that's a little different. You're talking about high crimes and treason and things like that, because treason and things like that you can always be
high crimes and misdemeanors is the exact language for impeachment.
Yeah. Right. Okay, but that's involving treason and things like that. We're not talking about a speeding ticket.
Not necessarily.
We're not talking. Well, actually, there's
With
a
Clinton,
lot of presidential immunity available. Okay, that's what
Right.
Kavanaugh's opinion is that presidential
with
immunity.
Clinton, it was perjury.
Well, that's different. He lied under oath. Yeah, perjury.
That's true.
And did he lose?
It's not as bad as treason.
Well, they started impeachment proceedings, but he did not get impeached.
That's
right?
true. He was acquitted.
Yeah, and that was all a political stunt, anyways, right? Based on a sexual act in the Oval Office. Me too, by the way.
He was impeached, which is the hearing. He wasn't convicted.
Right, he was acquitted.
Yeah, the impeachment hearing started. He wasn't kicked out of office.
Right.
I think it's easy to predict the Democrats' next move, like I mentioned off the air, and how I predicted last week regarding the multiple accusations. It's like poker. If you want to know what the other side has at the end of the hand, you have to give them 2 cards that you think they have and then play the hand as if you had those cards. What would your actions have been if you were holding those cards? In this situation, what will your actions be if you're the most despicable person on earth? If you're willing to sully the reputation of a good man and drag his family through the mud based on politics, if you give yourself those starting positions, you can predict the Democrats' next move every time, which is why I called last week that you're going to see multiple accusations. Because what else would you do? You have 1 unsubstantiated complaint. You know what will give people extra credibility? 2 unsubstantiated complaints. Before you know it, he's running gang rapes in college now.
Yeah, but now
right?
you're making unsubstantiated claims that the Democrats are purposely lying. That's an awfully cynical approach to say that
All
they're
I'm
just
saying is
coming up with
I'm
these
playing
people.
it out from that position, and every move they make, if you start from that position, makes sense logically, and you can predict the next move, and that's how I did it last time.
Oh. And
that's
do you
why-
apply that to John Kelly and Manafort and all of the people that have been indicted and that have pled guilty in the Trump administration?
Well,
do you apply that to them as well?
I think that's a different logical stream, so I couldn't.
Well, those are all
predict
good men too.
Well, that's a different story here. I don't think necessarily Paul Manafort, which is a political lobbyist, is necessarily a good man.
I don't think
know
those
him.
people are good men.
Okay, yeah, I don't know about those, and I can't stand up for those. I'm talking about Judge Kavanaugh specifically, and I'm talking about these allegations against him. And if you were going to try to take down a good man and you had no real facts or evidence on your side, what would your next move be? And if you start thinking from that angle, it's easy to predict the next move by the Democrats.
I think that if I was a Democrat, which I'm not, by the way, I would be questioning, and I would be happy if he got booted, but I would not invent things to get him booted.
Maybe
but
you
I would
wouldn't.
be asking.
Would you be shocked to hear that other people did invent things? Would that be such a shocker to you that someone is farther left and would invent something like that in such a situation?
No, in this environment, it wouldn't necessarily be that
either.
shocking.
In
but
fact,
there's
I
no
think it's
evidence.
predictable.
But there's no evidence that they've done such a thing.
Well, unsubstantiated complaints that seem to be predictably, on the way, is good evidence, right? That if you
have
guess
your
that-
mind made up, we know, we can see that. Yes.
Well, I want to hear what she has to say. Let's all listen, all right? You don't want to go there before the trial, even if you have a mountain of evidence. You never know. There's always that one thing that's the more important piece of evidence than any other piece of evidence. So you always have to search for that. But
well, the
going
committee chair
into it-
said they're already going and giving him the presumption of innocence and or correctness, and it's up to her to refute it. I just hope that the whole thing, and I don't think it will, but I just hope that it doesn't turn into a circus. I want to keep it.
It's a little late.
Yeah, we could argue that. I'm hopeful that it will be professional and respectful as possible. But Robert, you're right. Maybe it's too late.
No, this has already been a circus. Okay, it's the whole. Everybody has lost in this situation, as far as I see it. Everybody loses. I'm not sure what we would actually gain with this delay if it's like Glenn says, that there's just going to be another pick and he's not going to be as high rated by the ABA because no one else is. So why wouldn't you want your best student?
And then the circus is going to get worse.
Oh, yeah, because then you have real ammo. Right, you have factual ammo. You know what they say: if you have the facts on your on your side, argue the facts. You have the law on your side, you argue the law. If you don't have either, you sling
Attack
mud.
the opposition.
And
Sling mud. Yeah.
And this is route number 3 there for the Dems, slinging mud. And you know what? I got to give it to them. They are slinging mud at a professional level. Okay, I got to also point this out. We talked about
if being down in the dirt and the mud and the scum is professional, go ahead.
Well, both sides have their pros at that, right? Both sides have their professional mudslingers. But I do think that as far as the media goes, that the general media is on the side of Miss Ford without ever actually having heard from her.
I would agree with that.
Yep, I do too.
And I got to say that I believe that the tone on the street is that the majority of people, a strong majority, nearly all Republicans and a large percentage of Democrats believe Judge Kavanaugh and do not believe these accusations. And you can look at your Yahoo News webpage or all of the news web pages, And if you go down to the comment section, all of the articles are about why you should believe delayed reporting in sexual assault situations, psychological studies, why these credibility issues are not really here, and you should believe.
This is why I firmly believe that she was the victim of an attempted rape. But I'm just not convinced it was him.
But it was the standard Democratic play. After the allegations came out, now comes the media blitz. You go on your Yahoo News homepage, all the New York Times, LA Times, it's all why you should believe her and why he's a bad guy, okay? So now here comes the media blitz. If you go down to the comment section, the American people are not buying it. The comments are ruthless.
Well, those are the American people that feel compelled to respond in writing. There is a huge portion, and I've been saying this forever, there is a huge percentage of the population of the American people that does not respond to this. You have to remember, a majority of the people that listen to talk shows are not the majority of the population that call into talk shows.
So how's it playing in Peoria?
Well, I think, boss, it's a little bit, you're missing the mark a bit as far as the internet. And I got to say, maybe it's my perspective on it. But in fact, when you go down to these comment section, first of all, I go for these articles, you read the headline, you know, it's like a very catchy headline, something shocking. But I usually just browse through the article and go straight to the comments, because there's voting. You can like individual comments. So people support each other's opinions and they respond.
And how educated are these people that respond?
Some are very.
What are the majority of them?
Well, of course, a lot of them are also, you're getting the whole smorgasbord here. You're getting the whole plethora of people. But you
when
see
was the
where
last time you responded to an article? You.
Well, what do you mean by respond to an article? Because I responded to an Instagram post from Breitbart News while we were on this show.
Oh, okay, so you constantly
Breitbart is a very credible news organization. Just because they're conservative,
aren't they also extremely conservative?
Well,
yes,
when you
they
say
are
extremely
conservative.
Well, you mean fact-based? Because if you see the liberal news on
they have a
I don't watch
conservative
Fox.
leaning.
I'm not doing that here, which is more conservative leaning. Yeah, Breitbart is conservative, but I would say
Breitbart
it's more
is far right of Fox.
well, yes, in that sense, but I would say they're more factual than all other media organizations in the sense that they don't provide you opinion often. I'm not looking at opinions when I'm reading Breitbart News often. I'm looking at some sort of study that was produced or some sort of quote directly from an individual, so you get it straight from the horse's mouth, versus CNN's opinion 5 ways from Sunday. Exactly. Well, either way, I prefer like WikiLeaks.
I was just going to say Glenn probably listens to the most unbiased either way, and that's NPR.
Well, NPR has had accusations of liberal bias, but that's a slightly different argument. NBC is...
no, BBC.
Oh, BBC is not bad either. We can talk a whole nother episode probably about media organizations, right?
Well,
and where people get their news.
I get my news from 12 different sources.
The internet is a compilation.
I came in with that I printed, these are all from factcheck.com. That's the only thing that I printed.
And we can talk. We've talked about fake news on the show before, and we can talk about it again, but we are out of time, and we didn't even get to a single news story besides what's happening tomorrow, and that's exactly what I predicted, because that is what people want to hear. It is what we really wanted to talk about. For my chief of staff, keeping me in check and out of trouble at least 90% of the time, Dr. Michael Zima. My protege. Yes, I discovered him, but now he's doing his own thing, obviously. Attorney Robert Ozeron. Glen Laughlin, who was here over a year and a half ago when we started the thing from Roundhouse Recording, and look at where we are now at the Palace, the Round Table at Uncle's Studios. Yeah, Mike, remember when it was like we were in Glen's recording studio, about 12 by 12? If you stood up and stretched out, you'd probably knock half the amps over.
It was still pretty cool, though.
It was totally cool. It was cozy, comfy. For Uncle Studio on engineering the show, working out technical difficulties, Scott Walton. Back in Munich, Germany, Attorney John Scalia, thank you very much for your contributions. And, of course, we can't forget all the good people at WorkComp Central that continue to support and approve of this valuable project, including but not limited to Leaf File and Jake Paris. My name is Steve Appel. We'll see you again next week for another edition of WorkComp Matters.